All right, so this week, we're diving into something pretty interesting, I think. You've sent over this analysis of comments on Charlie Kirk's YouTube videos, and
Yeah.
it really feels like we're stepping into like a digital
Yeah.
battleground of ideas.
Yeah. So often we focus on what these influencers or these figures like Charlie Kirk are saying online. But this analysis takes a really interesting approach by looking at how people react to his content. So it's offering kind of a glimpse into how his audience is engaging with his ideas.
So it's almost like instead of just, listening to one side of a phone call, we're actually getting to hear how the other person's reacting to what's being said.
Yeah, exactly. Just really cool. So the source we're looking at today is a YouTube video that really dissects the comment section of 20 of the most popular videos from Turning Point USA's playlist.
Okay.
And we're talking a massive amount of data here, over 38,000 users, almost 60,000 comments were analyzed.
60,000 comments.
60,000 comments.
Wow. That's a lot of opinions.
It's millions.
To unpack. So before we get into all the details, were there any videos in particular that seemed to be like the biggest conversation starters?
Yeah, so one video really stood out in terms of just the sheer volume of comments. It was called Charlie Kirk School's Smug College Leftist.
Oh, okay.
And that video alone racked up over 14,000 comments. Another popular one was Charlie Kirk debates college students at the University of North Carolina.
Okay.
And that had over 6,000 comments.
It sounds like those videos really struck a nerve. Or maybe they just make for really entertaining viewing.
They do.
I don't know. But either way, people were clearly compelled to share their thoughts. Were they chiming in consistently, or were there certain days when that comment section was especially active?
Yeah. So Tuesdays and Thursdays were the most active days for comments, with the peak hitting on Tuesday, June 18th. And get this, the most active time of day was 2 a.m.
Who would 2 a.m.?
It's staying up that late to share their thoughts on Charlie Kirk videos.
It makes you wonder.
Is there a certain demographic? Is it like night owls? Are these international viewers? It's really interesting.
It definitely is. It's a question. Yeah.
It's a head scratcher.
Yeah.
So we've talked about when people are commenting, but did this analysis differentiate at all between diehard fans versus more casual viewers?
Yeah, it did. It broke it down into two categories. They called them super fans, which were the top 30 most frequent commenters.
Okay.
And then everyone else was kind of lumped into this category of what they called one-timers. So people who only left a single comment.
Got it. Interestingly,
both of those groups were really drawn to that Charlie Kirk School's smug college leftist video.
Okay.
The super fans left 350 comments on it.
Wow.
And then the one-timers left 12,325 comments.
Wow, that's a huge difference in volume.
It is. So that particular video clearly tapped into something that resonated with a lot of people. What about the super fans though? I mean, are we talking multiple times a day, every day?
Yeah, so to crack the top 50 commenters, you needed at least 24 posts across all 20 videos that were analyzed.
Okay.
And 81% of the users left fewer than 5 comments total.
Wow, okay. So it seems like while there are definitely some dedicated fans who are very active, a good chunk of the comments are actually coming from viewers who maybe aren't as engaged overall. So it kind of paints a more diverse picture of Kirk's audience, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And it suggests that the conversation happening there isn't just limited to a small echo chamber, but it's actually including a range of different perspectives.
Right, exactly. So we've talked about when people are commenting, who is commenting. Now let's get into the what. What kind of sentiments were all these comments actually expressing? I mean, was it all just negativity and outrage, or was there more nuance to it?
Yeah, to understand the emotional tone of the comments, they actually utilize something called sentiment analysis, which essentially uses natural language processing, or NLP, to categorize these comments as either positive, negative, or neutral.
So it's they're using technology to literally take the temperature of the comment section. I'm really curious to see what kind of emotions Charlie Kirk's videos are evoking in his viewers.
Yeah.
So what were the overall vibes like? Was it a love fest, a hate fest, or somewhere in between?
Well, the results are pretty fascinating. The video that triggered the most positive reactions actually wasn't about owning the libs or anything like that. It was actually titled Candace Owens' Honest Message to Gender Studies Majors.
Interesting. Why do you think that is? What was it about that specific video, or maybe like Candace Owens' message, that people seem to be responding to so positively?
That's a great question. Yeah, it could be her communication style, maybe the specific argument she was making. It could even be how the video was edited and presented. It'd be interesting to really kind of dig into the comments on that specific video
Right.
and see what exactly people were latching onto.
Right, right. There's a whole other layer of analysis we could do there.
Totally.
But for now, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Which video got the most like negative reactions?
So the video with the most negative sentiment was actually titled "Based Pastor Goes Off on School Board Over Graphic Book Available in Schools."
School boards and book bans. That's a recipe for heated debate online
Oh,
and
yeah.
offline. I can see why that one would evoke some strong feelings.
Yeah.
So we have Candace Owens on the positive end. We have the school board showdown on the negative end. Were there any other like overall trends in the sentiment, beyond those two outliers?
Yeah, so interestingly, Tuesdays and Thursdays, which were our peak commenting days, also saw the most negative comments overall.
Huh. So it's like clockwork. Maybe people are like, bringing those Monday blues into Tuesday, or
Yeah.
maybe by Thursday they're already feeling like the stress of the upcoming weekend.
It's possible, yeah.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see like how online behavior and sentiment kind of fluctuates
Right.
throughout the week.
Yeah.
As for time of day, comments tended to be more positive around 8 a.m.
Okay.
And then they kind of took a nosedive into negativity between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m.
So it's like the internet's collective mood just mirrors like the typical workday. Starts off optimistic and
Yeah.
then slowly declines
Yeah.
as the day goes on.
Yeah.
Relatable.
Yeah.
This sentiment analysis is really interesting, but I'm curious what people were actually saying, especially like, those who are on either extreme end of the spectrum.
Yeah. And that's where I think this analysis gets even more insightful. They actually used AI to summarize the posts of both the most negative commenter and the most positive commenter from those super fans that we talked about earlier.
Okay. All right. I'm ready. Lay it on me. What were the hottest of the hot button issues that got people all fired up?
So for the most negative commenter, a few key areas really emerged. Climate change was a big one with arguments about the validity of it, the causes of it, the role of human activity, all the things that tend to come up.
Yeah, climate change always seems to be a lightning rod for these online debates. It's such a complex issue with high stakes, so it's not surprising that people have really strong opinions about it. What else was on this user's radar?
They also talked a lot about, religion and politics, often criticizing conservative figures and ideologies. There were also debates about the value of a college degree, especially in today's job market. And then, of course, there were some personal attacks sprinkled in there as well.
Yeah, of course. Gotta love those.
You know,
So it sounds like this commenter was really engaging with a lot of the major ideological battlegrounds that we see playing out in our current political discourse. It's a reminder of how divided we are as a society on some of these really fundamental issues. Now, what about the most positive commenter? What were they most vocal about?
this one might surprise you a bit. The AI summary for the most positive commenter actually highlighted a debate on Marxism.
Marxism.
Yeah.
In a Charlie Kirk YouTube comment section. That's not what I was expecting at all. Were they defending it, or was it more nuanced than that?
It was definitely more nuanced.
Yeah.
So instead of just outright defending Marxism, they were kind of challenging people's understanding of it. Arguing that critics misunderstand its core principles and advocating for a more in-depth examination of its economic framework rather than just dismissing it outright as a dangerous ideology.
So they were encouraging people to kind of look beyond the surface level and actually engage with these ideas in a more critical way.
Exactly.
Interesting. Did they stick to just Marxism, or were there other topics that this commenter was really passionate about?
Well, they also talked a lot about economic issues, things like CEO pay and stock buybacks, income inequality, topics that really resonate with people kind of across the political spectrum these days. There was also some discussion of, racism, social issues, even some religious references thrown in there. But they framed all of these topics in a way that was more, philosophical and less explicitly partisan.
It's interesting how both the most negative and the most positive commenters were clearly grappling with these complex societal issues, just, obviously coming at it from very different perspectives,
Yeah.
which I think just speaks to the complexity of,
Yeah.
what we're talking about. It's a good reminder that even in a space that seems as polarized as a Charlie Kirk comment section, there's still room for nuance and thoughtful engagement.
Totally.
So we've talked about, negative sentiment. We talked about this surprisingly nuanced positive sentiment. But what about that video with the highest overall positive score? That Candace Owens video? What were people saying about her honest message to gender studies majors?
Yeah, and this is where we can really see the value of doing this sentiment analysis. So remember, that video had the highest overall positive sentiment. And when we actually look at the AI's summary of the comments, some themes emerge. A lot of the commenters were echoing Candace Owens's criticisms of gender studies and other similar degrees, seeing them as less practical in terms of career paths.
So agreeing with Owen's viewpoint seemed to correlate with more positive engagement. Was it all just like, agreement, or did the comments did they go beyond just echoing her opinions? It's interesting how certain videos can kind of spark these very like targeted conversations. With the Candace Owens video, did it mostly stay focused on that education theme, or did the comments kind of branch out into other areas at all?
Yeah, so while education was definitely like a dominant theme, there were definitely some threads about politics and social commentary kind of woven throughout. So a lot of the comments expressed, support for Candace Owens herself, and they were critical of, what some people perceive to be like liberal or woke ideology in education.
Yeah, those labels are hard to escape these days.
They are.
Even when you're talking about something like
Exactly.
choosing a college major. But it is interesting how something that seems so straightforward can become this springboard for these broader discussions about society and politics.
Totally. Just it highlights how interconnected a lot of these issues are.
Right.
And how these online platforms, like
Right.
YouTube, they can really become these spaces where these conversations kind of converge and sometimes in really unexpected ways.
It makes you think about the role of algorithms in all of this too, and we touched on it a little bit, but could you elaborate on how YouTube's algorithm specifically might be influencing the types of comments that we're seeing on these videos?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really crucial point because, YouTube's algorithm at its core, it's designed to promote engagement. We want to keep people on the platform watching more videos.
Right.
And one of the ways it does this is by recommending content that's similar to what a user has, watched previously or interacted with.
So if you're someone who's watching a lot of Charlie Kirk content and you're in the comments engaging, YouTube's more likely to recommend you similar content in the future, and it kind of creates this echo chamber effect.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily like an inherently bad thing, but it can create this sort of feedback loop where viewers are really only being exposed to viewpoints that align with their existing beliefs.
Right.
And it can end up, reinforcing biases and limiting exposure to different perspectives.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, you have this space where people can, connect with others who share their values and feel like they're part of a community. But on the other hand, like you said, it can create these ideological bubbles where people very rarely encounter any opposing viewpoints.
Exactly, yeah. And that brings us back to kind of like, our initial question.
Mm-hmm.
Are these comments that we're seeing, are they a true reflection of Charlie Kirk's audience as a whole? Or are we seeing, kind of a distorted picture shaped by algorithms and these echo chambers that we've been talking about?
It's tough to say, honestly. I mean, we've seen, a range of perspectives represented in these comments from those who are, very passionate supporters to those who are very vocal in their criticisms and everything in between.
For sure. And just the sheer volume and the diversity of the comments that we see does suggest that, it's not just this like small homogenous group of followers.
Right. So maybe the answer is it's more nuanced than just a simple like yes or no.
Right. And I think, ultimately what this deep dive has really revealed is just the complexity of online political engagement. It's not just about what, influencers like Charlie Kirk are saying, but also how their audiences are reacting, the algorithms that are shaping their online experiences, the broader societal issues that are really fueling these conversations. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. It is. And as always, we've only just, scratched the surface. But hopefully this has given our listeners a lot to think about and some new tools to kind of analyze and understand these online spaces that we all find ourselves in more and more these days. So until next time, this has been your deep dive.